Good morning, dear colleagues. We start our sessions, which is called Smart Cities and Business, New Economic Opportunities. Smart cities is a new reality. We used to have, like 100 years ago, we had some houses bringing profits, and then we had multi-storied buildings, and now we have a new stage of development. We understand that smart cities include information technologies, hospitals, transportation, security, but we also understand that smart city cannot go cold. If you live in a house which is not comfortable, then you won't be happy about any number of information systems you have outside. So the feeling of content human beings have is based on this feeling of comfort. And I've seen a lot of interviews, and in all those interviews, people say that we should focus on the human being, on the feeling of comfort that human being has. And the smart cities subject is included into the two nationwide projects. From 2017 to 2021, we allocate 125 billion from the federal budget and 35 billion from the local budget. So it's a very good start for our conversation today, and I would like to present the speakers of our plenary session. That is Andrei Chibis, Deputy Minister of the Civil Engineering, Sergei Kalugin, Deputy Minister of Digital Development and Telecommunications. That is Mr. Amr Salem, Global Director of Cisco Company Smart Cities Department. Vladimir Sidorovich, General Director of Energy Efficient Technology Institute. Anna Mamonova, Executive Director of the Regional Directors Repairing Multi-Storied Housing Projects. And Butnik Ivan, who is the participant of the application committee of Yekaterinburg for Expo 2025. The first question goes to Andrei Chibis. And it would be great to know what you said in your interviews, that smart city is a new stage of development of the infrastructure and of the environment. And I would like to see the vision of the Ministry of Civil Engineering and Housing Construction. Good morning, dear colleagues, and in our understanding, a smart city, we share this opinion with the Ministry of Communications and with the expert community, and we keep on working out this common understanding. We see a smart city as a comfortable city, so all services, all technologies should be aimed at providing comfort. And in 2017, our country launched a large-scale project which is recognized as one of the most successful in the country. So this subject matter of smart city is a new stage of development city infrastructure. Starting from these premises, we set the following objectives. First, it's a global competition for human capital. Before that, we used to have slogans and we tried to make headlines, but now we have the dynamics of migration, and that's socially active people, and they migrate from Russian cities. So our task is to change this trend. We should make sure that people of different class, of different occupation, should feel comfortable in our city. In our cities, I would like to emphasize that. And it's the most important objective that socially active young people with good educational background should be attracted to our cities. They should stay here and develop the economy and industry of our country, our motherland. So far, sometimes we are losing in this global competition for the human capital. So this is the most important objective of ours. And the second objective is connected with developing a proper infrastructure, public utilities, energy, transportation. All these infrastructures should be developed in our cities. And so far, unfortunately, this infrastructure is not efficient enough. It is quite old, quite outdated, and the solutions sometimes are taken not on the basis of data analysis, but according to some traditions, and that is why we have huge disproportions and huge inefficiencies in our city infrastructure. Sometimes we do not use even those opportunities that we have to organize comfortable logistics, comfortable public transportation, and energy efficiency. And we should invest in those areas where we lack, because sometimes we invest without proper consideration. We invest in those projects which already have proper allocation of money, or we lack proper calculations, proper feasibility studies, and sometimes these projects become unworkable, and sometimes we have too much money, sometimes we have not enough money for schools, for kindergartens, and the same can be said about business. Very soon we have huge shopping malls, and then we do not have vendors enough to lease this mall to. So that is the second most important task, is to increase efficiency of usage of our infrastructure. This is the second thing we have to resolve. And in order to transfer our discussion into the practical plane, we gathered our team of experts. We have representatives of Russian expert community and lots of colleagues from Asian countries and Western countries. And we have representatives of business community, and we started discussing things with them. We started discussing which principles should be laid down into the foundation of our development. And we are thankful to Mr. Kalugin from Ministry of Communication that now we understand what smart city is, although there is no single definition. But we are not writing a PhD thesis or a dissertation. We don't have to work out a precise definition. We worked out 5 principles on the basis of which we can communicate further. And the first principle is orienting at a human being, and it should be implemented in practice. So what do we mean by focusing on the human being? The management of the city should be also smart, and it should respond to the demands of the human beings. And secondly, the citizens, the dwellers of the city, should have an opportunity to influence decision-making. And one of the first projects we made, 18 million people voted for the priorities to be included into the 5-year plan of development of the city. And 60% of the votes changed our original plans. The municipal authorities used to think that they know better, but 60% of voters said differently. So that's the first principle. The second principle is comfortable and safe, secure environment. That is very important. And we mean both safe and secure in terms of physical protection of human beings and in terms of protecting the environment. And it is a huge demand for our cities. And the third point is efficient civil engineering and construction, which is based on data analysis, on the analyzing the data where we should develop and how we should do that efficiently, and how we should run public utilities efficiently, how we should construct transportation schemes and services. And you already mentioned it in your keynote that most of our cities are industrial cities, but it is over. It is a new stage already. We are oriented at the economy of services rather than the economy of industry, and our cities should not just deal with any other threat and challenge as soon as they arise. No, we should think it over. We should think about the implementation of new technologies, including those which are presented here at INNOPROM, and we should analyze which services, which jobs, for which categories of people we should create in our cities so that every person should be comfortable. So these are the major principles we agreed upon, and we should make the first steps. So the first step we made was that we launched a data bank on smart technologies, and we have accumulated about 3 dozens of solutions which have already been tested by our Asian partners, Western partners, and now we can implement these solutions, and we keep accumulating this database of knowledge and solutions, and we can use these solutions, not just separate technologies, but already technologies connected with the financing, with the legal base, and in order to promote it, we prepared, with the help of our colleagues from all the ministries and agencies, we prepared an application about distribution of subsidies, federal subsidies, and the most subsidies will be received by those cities which use these technologies of a smart city. So here is the practical implementation. We have the database, so please, dear colleagues, apply to us and we will give you money for that. We've chosen 25 pilot cities, large cities and small towns, and those cities and towns decided to start implementing those innovations about creating a smart city. And our task as public officials is to deal with all controversies. We help them in overcoming the administrative barriers, in overcoming the red tape they may face, and Yekaterinburg, your city, is one of these pilot projects. But apart from such large industrial cities, we also have a number of small towns. And besides taking into consideration presidential decrees and presidential address to the Federal Assembly, one of the major tasks about digitalization, we have agreed on proper procedures. And we agreed with the Ministry of Communications. We worked out a project of digitalization of public utilities in a smart city. This project is a systemic approach which already acquires its forms, its shapes within the framework of the concept set forward by the President, and we see 3 strategic directions of our work. That is creation of a methodological and legislative base and environment. That is why we need the pilot projects, so that we could understand the projects, the problems, the challenges in the way of implementation of these modern solutions. So here is a huge block connected with the methodology and legislation. The second approach is creating the so-called innovative sandboxes. We should find the best practices, we should try those best practices, and we should support these best practices so they could be disseminated. And this environment for smart cities, these pilot projects, we will keep on working with them, and the government of the Russian Federation will keep on accepting decisions. We will be choosing the proper projects out of those pilot projects. They will receive proper financing, and we will accumulate all this information into our data bank, and then we will disseminate this information further. And our example is the Active Citizen program in Moscow. We have agreed about the details, and we decided to disseminate this idea, this platform, to other cities. That's minimization of the efforts spent by the public authorities. And our task is to disseminate this smart city project, smart city platform throughout the country. And the third approach is the digital platforms, the standards which allow us to plan and project and design different things within our city. It's just like a Lego, a digital Lego, which can be used in our cities and meet the specific challenges in every city. As an example, I can tell you that there is a number of solutions for different cities. For example, there is Safe City project. There are cameras, and there is intellectual accounting, and there is special services of monitoring and checking the incidents. But unfortunately, very often different services do not correlate their efforts. So our task is to correlate all these solutions and all the databases so that the data taken from different sources can be of use both for the citizens of the city and for the public figures and for the business community. So this is the approach to digital platform will be capable of making our life more comfortable and will develop the city environment on the basis of the demands of the citizens. That is the third approach we see as necessary in our work, and we applied to the government of the Russian Federation, and there will be a lot of discussions. We will discuss the budget of the project for the next 6 years, and I hope that in October we will accept it and we will work out the proper decisions. And the new Minister of Public Utilities supports us. So apart from structuring and working out our research, we already implement it in practice. So in Yekaterinburg, right now, we are having a brainstorm about further directions of development of the smart city. And we are discussing how to implement our policies in practice. And we set this ambitious task for ourselves. We are working out a rating, an IQ about cities, and there will be this rating for the cities that will be like benchmarking for all different cities. And we think it's an ambitious project, and we would like to make it international. And we will be able to compare different cities, and we will understand where the good things are, where the bad things are. It's too early to talk about the criteria, but so far, it's not a technological approach. It's not about accessing the internet and installing gadgets and gauges. No, we should measure the effects, the consequences. We are trying to work out such indices, such indicators, for example, like the percentage of high school students who travel to school by themselves, or juniors traveling to school by themselves. So that would be accessibility and safety and security of schools, and how comfortable, how efficient the logistics of public transportation is. So, for example, if younger school students walk to school, that demonstrates the efficiency of the public transportation. So that is what we are working out, and I hope that within the next few months we will try to disseminate it in a wider audience. We will discuss these indices, these indicators, which we are going to use in our country and maybe in other countries as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrei. Questions to the speakers. You may ask after all the speakers finish their presentations. And the next speaker will be Sergei Kalugin. And my question would be similar. So a smart city is a consortium of hundreds of players who need to find some common rule games and to find some common priorities. So how can telecommunications ministry or how this ministry sees this problem? Thank you very much. Distinguished colleagues, as I understand, we are talking here about smart cities and business. And when we talk about new opportunities, we talk about both about smart cities and business as it is. It seems to me that it's quite representative that we are holding this discussion here in Yekaterinburg, and when we go around all these wonderful exhibition halls and seeing large number of companies, I think that we can make some very simple conclusions. A lot is being said about epoch of digital transformation. The world is changing rapidly, and this is really important to understand who is going to benefit from that. When we visit this exhibition, we understand that benefits come not to Russian companies primarily, because most brands that we see here that are promoting some kind of innovations. I'm not trying to limit our Russian companies or to generate any hard feelings. I'm just telling about my impressions. I think that mostly benefit large international companies. And then basic questions arises. What should we do about it? And if we go back to smart cities and business issue, probably we could discuss this topic quite a lot, but I would like to focus on two major trends. First of all, smart cities are cities where those cities are easy to do business in. And on one hand, entrepreneurs and municipal authorities, on the other hand, are seeking comfortable business conditions. And in terms of digital economics, we should implement the appropriate platforms. If we talk about platforms, probably it would be correct thing and reasonable thing to look at two things. First of all platforms are based on certain standards. And I'd like to say many thanks to Andrei, because when we look at this smart city program, which was created by Ministry of Construction, there is large section devoted to standards. It's difficult to build smart standards, smart cities, if we use old standards of the Stalin times. And we have to start, of course, with this particular thing. Quite often we live and believe in some myths or some speculations, beautiful speculations, but economics of data is based on standards and those algorithms that are built over those standards. This is first comment. The second comment, when we talk about business, this is we mean companies that are dealing with this projects of smart cities. So companies that provide some services, build municipal utility systems or security systems or doing something else. What conclusions can we make when we look at this landscape? First of all, in each city there are hundreds of IT systems, and those cities, we already talked about global competition, and those cities that have a diverse landscape, those cities are able to generate cheap and proper transactions. Each platform functions doing something, and we can do it with cheap and effective means. So we have to do something in this direction. On the other hand, when we talk about digital platforms, not always we understand the direction in which they are moving. For example, if we look at this exhibition, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings here, but we see some roadmaps or some plans demonstrated by companies of different sectors. So they mostly focus on security and household utilities, which is a good thing. But if we talk about our country and each city and town in our country, and they have some challenges because Yekaterinburg wants to become the capital of Expo World Exhibition and to host this exhibition. And the question is, how do these companies understand what is going to be important tomorrow? The future is built around human being. It is built on simple things like such as convenient environment, good medicine level, environmental issues, and of course household utilities. So we have to see those directions, and we have to build our strategies in according with these trends. There is another story which should be mentioned here. In global world, we have competition between global companies. We do not have such global companies like Cisco in Russia, but if we want to have our competitive potential, we have to develop our own approaches and strategies that would help us to achieve this desired goal. Therefore, what we do right now, we have already mentioned that we have arranged a consortium of smart cities, including venture companies, large corporations, medium-sized businesses, and it's really important for us since we do not have global leaders in our country, but we have to create small, medium, and large companies working in one direction and creating competitive product. Therefore, consortiums and associations are relevant in our situation. And the last thing I'd like to mention here, this is wonderful exhibition, wonderful host city. We all feel that we do have this chance, and we know that in our history, we had such times when we missed those chances. And whether we use these chances or not will be dependent upon how rational our strategies would be, how we can think in digital ways, because digital algorithms and digitally based data are more efficient. Thank you, Sergey. Now I would like to give the word to Amr Salem, but before that, I'd like to tell you that Dr. Salem is going to speak in English, and near the entrance there is translation equipment. If someone of you needs those these headsets, please raise your hands, and those who need it, please pick up those headsets. So you just
keep your hands raised, and we will give you the headphones. So there is a shortish pause, and while they are bringing the headphones, I will make this announcement that Cisco has been participating in INNOPROM for quite a while, and it's one of the drivers of the smart city issue. And last year they had an interesting research about smart cities. This Cisco research assessed, let's say, efficiency or usefulness of this city, and they said that it will take like $2-3 trillion in a few years. And the question to Mr. Salem is, what do you see as new opportunities for businesses both in Russia and globally, on the global markets? Because of course we are very much interested in the global experience. Just wait a bit for a few headphones to be brought in and distributed, and that will help us to work properly. 4 more headphones, please. Thank you very much, and Mr. Salem, you are welcome.
First of all, thank you, and sorry to keep you waiting, and sorry about English. I cannot, my Russian is not very good at all. Your Excellencies, thank you for the introduction. We share a lot of the views that you have presented. and I congratulate you on the vision for the Russian government on the progress in the smart city area. Just before I start on the economic value that we have discussed, I want to just go through what we also believe from a smart city perspective. We believe smart city is a journey. It is not a destination. There is no, at any point in time, some city is not smart today and will be smart tomorrow. It will be a way of life for the future. That's the first thing. The second thing is we also believe that it is not about technology. Although we are a technology company, we've been involved in smart cities for more than 7, 8 years now, right from the beginning. But smart cities is about the people. It's about the people that live in the city. And we measure the work that we do based on the livability of the city. How sustainable is the city for the citizens that live in it, and how easy it is for people to live in the city. That's the main objective. The cities become livable by becoming economically sustainable, where basically you attract investments and businesses to operate in the city, you attract talent to live in the city, and at the same time you reduce the cost of managing the infrastructure of the city, so that economically the GDP of the city grows. We also believe it has to be socially sustainable. Social sustainability means the quality of the services that the cities deliver to its people, the people that live there, have to also be at a high quality and makes it livable. Quality of the services means safety, means healthcare, means education, all of these services. Last but not least, we also believe that it has to be environmentally sustainable. Environmental sustainability means the carbon footprint of the city, the water consumption, the energy consumption, the waste management. All of these services have to be efficient, of high quality, to reduce the carbon footprint of the city on the environment. This is what we believe constructs our smart city proposition, and I believe it could be good input for the index or the benchmark that is being developed by the government. Now a little bit on the technology so that I can get to the economic value. If you look at any smart city from a technology perspective, to simplify it, you have a lot of sensors on the ground that basically digitize the physical service that we live in, or the physical environment, from physical to digital. These sensors are connected over a network that goes to a data center where there are applications that use the data to analyze it, understand it, and deliver a better and more efficient services based on what we are learning from these sensors. There has to be a platform in the middle that basically collects all of this data and presents the data to the applications. That's the idea. Now the key here is the platform, and I go back to your point, because without the platform, you will have a very complicated environment of connecting all of these different pieces together. The platform technologically is very important, but also economically very important. The economic value, I'm going to come to in a minute, is basically when you create that platform, you have to create an ecosystem of multiple companies, international and local. Not only international, and I recognize that probably in this space there is more international players. In the work that we're doing here, we've already, as Cisco, we have our own platform to manage cities that is installed in more than 50 cities. We already have 5 companies from Russia that are integrated on our platform, available on our price list to be sold worldwide. This is economic value contribution that the platform brings to the local economy. The second thing, when you look at this value that we create, the study that we did not look at the market of smart cities as how many computers and routers and switches and technology will cities be buying. That's not the value. The value is what is the value to the people by implementing technology and digitizing the service. And that's the basis of our study. So when you implement this technology, what value do the people get, and how can I quantify this value in an economic benefit? And the value we came up with is $2.3 trillion. That's $2,300 billion until 2024. From now until then, worldwide. The value comes where? The value comes in efficiency, in worker productivity, in lowering cost of managing infrastructure, in attracting investment, in freeing up money that could be reused to grow the economy. the value is not in who is buying what. It doesn't mean that somebody is paying, but it means that we have created efficiency in the world, that we have more work hours available to invest somewhere else. We have more workforce available to invest somewhere else. This is economic value. And I will give a few examples to make the point. Let's say there is an oil and gas pipeline, and there is a leak that has been detected. Today, to recognize the leak, you need to, it's a complicated process, where it is and how it is. Even a water leak for a water pipe, it's complicated. With technology, when you have sensors, you have drones, you have cameras, you can recognize this much quicker. You can direct the maintenance staff much quicker to go fix it in a much shorter period. You have reduced the cost of fixing the leak. Let's say there is a bus, public transport. It needs to stop and go to service once every month because that's the scheduled maintenance. And sometimes it breaks because it required maintenance halfway through the months. If you monitor the performance of the bus with technology remotely, you would know when it breaks, you would know when a part needs to be changing, and you will avoid the disruption of transportation. Smart contracts is another thing. How do we contract with each other in businesses? Contracts have to have value that is basically deliver value rather than deliver a service. And I'm going to give a very funny example. In one of the cities I worked with, they wanted to lay down fiber for the internet. And to lay down the fiber cables, they had two contractors. One contractor for the civil work and one contractor to supply the fiber cables. The contractor for the civil works contract was to dig, and when the work is finished, on that day, put back, close it and make the road back. The contractor finished, but the other contractor never got paid. So one contractor dug and closed, but there were no cables inside. The other contractor did not put the cables. So this is not a very smart contract. And this is a way for understanding that we could contract better if we have technology and we can monitor the performance of contractors better. Last, I'll talk a little bit about the international best practices. We see in most of the successful cities in implementing smart technology, they have to have a vision and they have to have an objective. Good examples of visions and objective is, for example, Copenhagen. By 2025, the city of Copenhagen will be completely carbon neutral. That's their vision. They will have zero impact on the environment. And based on that, they do everything to support that vision. They change the light from halogen to LED to reduce energy consumption, to reduce the carbon footprint. 67% of transportation and traffic in Copenhagen today is on bicycles to reduce carbon footprint. And so many things. That one big vision drives the agenda underneath it. Another example, in the city of Las Vegas, for example, the #1 cause of death in Las Vegas is crossing the streets. I don't know if anybody has been there. The #1 cause of death, because people walk a lot, it's a high tourist area, and then when they come to crossing on the zebra line, in the traffic light, they gather too many of them, so they push each other on the road. So what they have done is that we have worked with them to implement a sensor that counts the number of people waiting, and we change the light before people start pushing each other on the road. That's smart technology. That's technology saving lives and creating economic value. Thank you very much.
Спасибо, господин Салем. Конечно, пример с...
Thank you very much, and Las Vegas example is very impressive. Thank you very much for that. And I pass the floor to Mr. Sidorovich, the General Director of Energy Efficiency and Construction Institute. And Mr. Salem touched upon a very important subject of carbon footprint. And the cities are very responsible for this carbon footprint. And according to the international energy data, 30% of energy consumption in the world and 39% of carbon footprint and greenhouse gases are produced by the cities. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much. And you mean the global data, and if we take the countries with the heating season, we can have much larger footprint. And in the same report of the International Energy Agency, which was published last year, there is such a phrase, and I quote, "We need emergency action to avoid being locked in energy inefficient buildings for a decade ahead." And we can talk about a smart city as if it were a building. If we talk about smart cities today in our new digital economy, it would be wrong if we implement these wonderful technologies but remain locked in such inefficient cities for decades ahead, if our heat consumption and heat production is so inefficient as it is now. And I would like to emphasize the necessity of a comprehensive approach when you work out such projects. What do I mean by a comprehensive approach? Very often, smart city is understood as electronics and all those wonderful technologies and digitalization and software. And basically, that means lack of a comprehensive approach, because when you discuss these gauges and software, it is not a comprehensive approach, it's just separate tools, separate instruments. And it has been mentioned already that we don't have a common definition of a smart city. And people have different views of what a smart city is. So when we have the federal program of smart city, there is the risk of going in different directions immediately. There is an axiom that you cannot manage something which you cannot measure. So it's necessary to be able to measure our indicators, our indices, and we should have some benchmarks, some etalones, some standards. And as I've mentioned, there is not single unified standard. There are some British standards made out by some British institution, and our institution can work out their own standard. There is ISO 37120, the so-called smart cities standard, but it does not have the word smart in it. It emphasizes the environmental development and sustainable development of communities. That's exactly what the previous speaker has mentioned. And in my opinion, which is shared by many experts, we should look at a smart city broader as a means of developing sustainability of life and improving living standards of all citizens. And if you have a specific system, a specific structure, the new changes in the system do not necessarily change the system itself. They can improve it, but by themselves they are not enough to improve the work of the city. So basically, we need a proper basis to build an infrastructure. And it's a bad thing when you have a bad infrastructure in the city. You have nothing to be based on. As an example, we had a kindergarten designed in Khanty-Mansiysk, and they studied the best practices in the kindergartens, and it was 40 below outside, and the temperature inside was plus 26 degrees centigrade. And even if they cooled down the heating infrastructure, it would have been very bad, because there will be humidity. The humidity will be too high in the kindergarten, so they had to change everything. And when you implement the smart city program, if you just install Wi-Fi, or if we take some smart solution like some smart Japanese toilet, it will not change your situation if the basic infrastructure is bad. So you have to refurbish the basic infrastructure, and we have the all necessary instruments and tools to do that. There are lots of different materials and solutions. We have, for example, wall panels where you have facades together with insulation, and you can refurbish the whole building. You can refurbish all the facades properly. You have ventilation and heating structures, and we should standardize them properly. And we lose quite a lot in our public heating systems. On the other hand, there are very good public heating solutions produced locally, and we can resolve these, we can meet these challenges only if we use new energy efficient materials, because we have to think of the city as a number of buildings, and we should increase energy efficiency and heat protection of the separate buildings. In many industrially developed countries, they try to cut down on the energy of every building. And, for example, Europe lives on the directive of energy efficiency, and from 2021, all the buildings have almost zero energy consumption. But in our case, our working standards and our working legislation is much lower rather than the norms established in 2003, and even these norms are very often violated. And it's a good thing that the current roadmap of digitalization of Russian economy envisages working out energy efficient standards for civil engineering and construction, and I'm very interested in the solutions they are going to offer. Energy efficiency envisages not only cutting down on energy consumption, but also on the improving quality of life inside the building. And there is another important thing: improving the standards for energy efficiency. We form demand for new materials. We create new jobs with high added value industries. And we also increase the income of the population, and we decrease the social inequality between different classes. And as the previous speaker said, if we look at the global experience, one of the major tasks is to cut down on the carbon footprint. And it's not only about the environment, it's about decreasing the anthropogenic load on the atmosphere. And different cities and towns made it their objective to make zero footprint, zero carbon footprint. Such cities as Melbourne, Copenhagen, Los Angeles, Frankfurt, Helsinki, and many others. And this objective cannot be resolved by pure digitalization, electronics, automation. It can be resolved with different steps and measures. The first is to increase energy efficiency and decrease energy consumption by public transportation, by industries. And the second task is changing the structure of generation. The first task, energy efficiency, we need new standards, we need a new revolution, we should improve the standards, and it will be the driver of economy development. We have the task here in our country to increase our economic growth and to increase our GDP to be fifth in the world, and we can meet this challenge only through the domestic market improvement, and we have all necessary technologies for that. We have good insulation materials like facades, heat insulating facades, and we have portfolio solutions for industry which should be used, and it would be expedient to include it into the database of smart cities. And the state has to stimulate this production. by using standards. That's the classical option for economy. And to finalize, I would like to say that I work with energy production and renewable energy. And today, in our civil construction, we use geothermal and sun energy, all other renewables, and at the moment there are thousands of cities in the world which set their objective as using renewable sources of energy. And it's not necessarily about the cities where the conditions are favorable. Let's take Helsinki, for example. And it's in the north, and they have this project Carbon Neutral Helsinki to 2030. And by 2035, renewable energy power plants will produce lots of energy for the capital of Finland. So that's what we are going to do. We have Hill company awarded yesterday, and they produced some solar panels and modules. So gradually we are improving our work here, and we should be using these products. And by way of conclusion, I would like to say that smart city is not only about electronic services and digital services. If you have poor building and not enough heat insulation and not very good permeability of your buildings, you cannot call your city a smart one. And smart city technologies can deal with a wide spectrum of technical solutions, and we should improve energy saving and energy consumption standards and include these solutions into the data bank of solutions of smart cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Vladimir. The floor is given to Anna Mamonova, Executive Director of Association of Regional Structural Repairs Operators. As I looked at the website of urban utilities reform, the program in the plans for repair include about 700,000 houses, residential houses. Can we say that after these repairs, these houses will approach this idea of smart houses? Yes, we do have more than 730,000 houses planned for repair. This is a large-scale reform, and we consider it successful, and it is performed according to our plans. Currently, we are performing repairs of about 50,000 residential flats per year, and each sixth house had this repair. What does that mean? It means that residents felt the benefits of this repair. At the start, it was one or two types of works. Now we are moving in the direction of more holistic approach, more complex set of works, and the statistics says 2.8 types of works in one residential multi-flat house. Not all regions have these technologies that could create so-called smart housing. The system is built, and our initial steps to automate this process included government decree of number 615. When we talk about materials that we use for repairs, we always ask ourselves, how can we regulate these issues? How can we establish some unified standards and rules? Currently, we work in the following direction. In terms of technical committee based on regional operators, we have created subcommittee, and this subcommittee has a plan for works working plan for this year, and one of the major points of this plan is development of 3 major state standards. This reform says that we should use competitive procurement methods, and these procurement methods are all included into governmental acts. We have to unify these processes, and these state standards will be imperative. So first of all, this is state standard in terms of standards and materials used for structural repairs. Currently, we have started developing this state standard, and we will work in conjunction with National Association of Construction Material Manufacturers, and we have to establish limit parameters for those materials that can be used for structural repairs. All materials have some standards, but there is no single standard telling which material should be used for residential houses with multiple flats. And in terms of energy saving and innovative technologies, we have to regulate these borderline parameters. The next standard that we are going to develop is related to designing, and one of the basic standards is standard for organization of repair works. These standards are developed in conjunction with expert associations. As I already mentioned, we work with Association of Construction Materials Association. So we include different parties into this into development of various standards for structural repairs. However, to determine which technologies should be used, which technologies are used, which are not used, we have to digitize the available, the existing information. Currently, we collect this information manually. The practice in the regions is quite interesting, but to propagate these techniques, it should be reproducible in different types of residential houses. We worked with Rusnano, with our colleagues from Rusnano, how we can unify this process and how we can get this data more reliable in a more reliable fashion. And we are planning an initiative to include this data into reports of construction ministry, and to enter data about amount of innovative materials used for structural repairs. I think that this measure is going to be very effective. It will stimulate development and automation of certain processes that were not automated before. As an example, automation of dealing overdue payments issue in the regions. Our regions worked manually with this problem, but now we have this point that we should give this data about overdue payments by residents. And as soon as we have these parameters, we see the global automation process in all regions. All regional operators have this model, automated model of dealing with overdue payments. And there is a large niche for using IT technologies and programs by regional operators. Many regional operators come up with their own initiatives. For example, they offer video surveillance, drones to examine residential houses. And it's gratifying to see that these technologies improve work productiveness. And also there are regional initiatives and their own IT products that optimize the process of designing, of examining houses, and create some kind of database for ready designs. for typical constructions of residential houses. This practice is being used in different regions, and we accumulate these practices on the basis of our association, and we are going to propagate it and to deliver this data to constructions ministry to support these processes. Another thing I'd like to mention is the topic of smart city and business in residential houses is related to energy saving structural repairs, and I totally agree with previous speaker. And there is also opportunity to improve energy efficiency of residential houses. Currently, repairs are focused on restoration of constructive elements, but now it is outdated approach when we restore old structural elements. It does not improve quality of life. We have to talk about improvement of people's quality of life for their money that they pay for structural repairs. So residential houses should be more effective after structural repairs when we restore the structural elements, but also we should use additional technologies thanks to using additional sources like an energy service. And also I would like to praise, among others, Sverdlovsk region, because they have very interesting product, structural repairs eye. They have this product, structural repairs eyes, which allows us to monitor all the structural repairs. It reduces cost of repairs, and these online surveillance technologies are currently used in several regions, and those technologies give us build trust among the citizens, and also they provide opportunities for automation and processing of this data. That I have finished my presentation. Thank you. Before we give the floor to Ivan Burtnik, we have a comment from Andrei. It's not a comment, it's just two previous speakers talked about cold climate and energy efficiency. A few words about climate. It's July 10th, and in Chukotka and Yamalo-Nenetsk region, the heating season is ongoing, so you have to understand the scale of the country. And regarding structural repairs, I do not agree that, and I think that when roofing is leaking for many years, the dry ceiling in a flat and electrical wiring, improved electrical wiring effects really improves quality of life. And in 2010, when we just started this project, it was very difficult to do things. Our first priority was elevators and roofings, but now we are talking about 126,000 houses repaired and replaced elevators and replaced roofings. So I think that this household modernization is really efficient. And today we have created the set of current technological solutions that allow us that bring us to the next level, where at which we can introduce energy-saving technologies related to climate, to weather changes, and we have to use a reasonable approach to improve the heat insulation of facades of the houses, and it helps us to obtain this energy saving goal. In 2017, we launched the theme of state support for energy effective repair, and people want it, and it works. And our future plans are very simple. We have to maximally simplify this process of obtaining state support for energy saving houses, and we are planning to introduce these digital platforms for residents, so that people could pay could make their utility payments online and other payments. All these measures promote energy efficiency, and we are currently working on this project at the level of the government, and we want to simplify this process of state support for houses that need these structural repairs. And we also continue developing energy service, and we have to use standard types of work, and sometimes operators offer standard set of works and additional sets for additional money to make houses more comfortable, more convenient, and smarter. But people, as Russian surveys show us, people are prepared to use and people are prepared to pay for smart home technologies because this house becomes much more convenient for them. Therefore, structural repairs topic and this financial mechanism, which is about 150 billion in terms of investment annually, the amount that people pay. So this is quite efficient tool which improves energy efficiency of our household and modernization of our residential apartments. And this is a significant contribution to this smart city that we live in. And we have here lots of representatives from companies that work with relevant technologies, and I encourage everyone to use this topic of structural repairs and the amount of investments in this area to offer their innovations, and we are ready to support these innovations on our part. And as and the word is given to Sergei Kalugin. I'd like to make two short comments also to continue this discussion. Quite often it seems to us that new processes bring some benefits to us, but quite often these wonderful stories about smart cities bring a lot of problems to us, and I'd like to say a few words about this problem. This is the problem of inequality. Our colleague from Cisco told us that smart city is a happy city, livable city where people have no social problems, but when we have this movement towards new digital paradigm, we see this inequality increasing. A simple example, we were talking about smart cities with happy, healthy people. But if we look at our medicine, our medical services are covered by a medical insurance foundation, and the difference between big cities and small towns is tenfold. It means that technological medical help is inaccessible for citizens in small towns. Another thing, if we talk about business, I'd like to mention the next thing. I am state official. How do we think when we make some programs? We want to build a bright future immediately, to do it tomorrow, and we want to have smart transport system, sensors on zebra crossings, but we do not have enough money for all these smart things. And if we talk about inequality, elimination of digital inequality required 100 billion rubles. And when I talk about business, I'm not talking about large state-based companies. I'm talking about small and medium enterprises. These types of businesses should be actively involved in these processes, not to overlook these opportunities, and we have to use rational strategies to do that. Sometimes there is old story. Two gentlemen see each other, and one asks, "Do you have honest accountant?" "Yes, I have such accountant, but he serves his prison term." All officials think differently. We do have problems about Sergey mentioned, but the topic of digitalization and smart cities in our logics, in considering international practices, but we still see there's opportunities to diminish this inequality in terms of services accessibility. All these modern technologies are needed mostly for needed that any person could have access to those urban facilities and amenities and services thanks to smart planning of city management, no matter whether this person is rich or poor. If we talk about reasonable planning, people with limited abilities, disabled people, or senior citizens living in this city, they also should have some amenities for them. So this is our task, as I see it, and all the modern solutions and taken into considerations all the things that needed by various citizens. This allows us to make city convenient for everyone. Maybe it's the thing of the future, but we move in this direction, and we see something already in our reality.
I think we will talk about some of these practices, and in September a commission will be considering Yekaterinburg application for Expo 2025, and the application includes the concept of a smart city, Yekaterinburg being one city. So I would like to ask the head of the application committee, Ivan Bortnik, to share his views about that. It's not going to be in September, it will be 20th of November, and our application is transformation of the world for new generations, and it's quite an ambitious task, and I will share with you our ideas about the smart city. Russia participates in this movement for 126 years, but never have we hosted an international Expo exhibition. That's a global exhibition, takes place every 5 years, and we think that 17 million people will come to Yekaterinburg. Here for the World Cup we had 30,000 people, and if we win the application that will be 300,000 within half a year. And I agree that there is no definition of a smart city, but why should the city of Yekaterinburg need that smart city? Here we are at INNOPROM, at the industrial heart of Russia, and we've been talking about Industry 4.0, about digitalization. If you look through the exhibition hall, you will see that it's basically Industry 3.0. We are talking about still automation, robotics. It's transformation from production to R&D, and there is a place for a person, for a human being who manages all these operations. But what we call Industry 4.0 is something different. It's 3D printing, it's the interface, it's the link of networking from the customer to the supplier, and everything is automated, and the design is included into that. These are completely new specialists, new experts, and I don't think very many experts from 3.0 industry will be able to work in 4.0 industry. So we will have to re-educate them, retrain them, train new people who will be able to work with 3D printers. We need people with mathematical thinking who can design new things, who could work with artificial intellect. And we need designers who will be using added reality, for example. And we heard about $500 trillion as the potential of this digital pie, and it's quite a huge question whether Yekaterinburg will have a share of this pie. And if we win the application of Expo 2025, one of the objectives will be to create the infrastructure of continuous learning, continuous education, which will prod younger generation into studying, into becoming such specialists. There will be a focus of fab labs, as we call them. We will grow children who will be able to use these 3D modeling and 3D technologies in industrial design. And it's only a part of our application. Of course, with such application, you cannot talk about values for Yekaterinburg only. And Mr. Salem was quite correct in saying that the city, the smart city, should be very sustainable. And I'm personally from Moscow, and even in Moscow we have public heating switched off in May. And I used to criticize the authorities. And then I went to other countries in the world and I saw that 2.6 billion people have no centralized heating, and they use cow chips and sticks to heat their buildings with. And we've been discussing carbon footprint today, and the 30% of the carbon footprint is produced by the city. But if we talk about the industrial enterprises located in the city, we generate like 60% of all the wastes, and increasing the energy efficiency and production of those enterprises will increase our efficiency in general. In 30 years, we will have about 10 billion people, and our problems will increase manifold. In Latin America, there is 8% of population, but 38% of murders. And the problem with Latin America is incorrect urbanization, and we are going to have the same kind of problem. And the growth of population will take place in developing countries, in the cities of developing countries. I think it will concern Russia as well, and we have noticed that many fans decided to stay here in Russia, and the more we develop our environment, our smart cities, the more migrants we will have. Are we prepared to host those migrants, our sustainable smart cities? Will they be able to host these new migrants? And this raises the issues of security, education. And another number is 350,000 children have no school education. And smart cities can become hubs for new education technologies. Healthcare, education, waste management. We think that the number of wastes will be corresponding to the amount of fish in the global ocean. And here in Russia, we process only 5% of waste, and everything else is accumulated. That's quite a serious concern. So smart cities should be first sustainable and should create happiness, and we should focus on human beings. And within the framework of our application, we create a center of competencies And within these 7 years, we will be accumulating competencies how to make our cities smart. And we will implement the best practices here in Yekaterinburg. And our expertise will be the added value which we are going to produce for the world. So we will transform the life in the future for better. Thank you very much. Our time is over, but I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions if we have a couple of questions in the room. Please introduce yourself. We need microphone. Switch it on. Try it once again. Dmitry Shingin, Magazine Connect. Очень плохо слышно. В микрофон. Dmitry Shulgin, Connect Magazine. The question to Mr. Salem. Do you think that the concept, the very concept of a smart city is based on a contradiction, on a fundamental contradiction? To provide for the comfort of a human being, you have to create a technogenic environment, and you penetrate the privacy, the life of that human being. You insert lots of gauges and technologies into the life of the human being, and lots of different centers using artificial intellect make some decisions for that human being, and it violates our privacy. And the privacy is not just a trendy word created by liberals. It is also about safety and security. You made this example about Los Angeles, and that system saves lives. But if somebody uses those gauges, they will be able to kill people. So how shall we find this balance between privacy and this penetration of technologies into the human life? As a moderator, I will interfere. After the conference, you can ask personal questions. It's an expert session, and it's more important for us to answer the questions of business community. And you can come up to Mr. Salem after the session, and I think he will be able to answer your question. Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Russian Federation. First of all, I would like to wish you success in your complicated project. And now we have come to an understanding that even in developing different industries, and for example, when we talk about artisans, that develops our territories, develops our regions. And as a next head of the project of Yelabuga development, the city of Yelabuga, there is such a suggestion. First, you need some pilot projects in your cities. We should come back to the idea of distributed centers on our territories. There should be experts who know the most advanced technologies, and we should not limit ourselves to larger cities. We should develop small towns as well. And there is a huge lack of necessary experts in smaller towns. And the next thing is the information we are going to accumulate on our platforms. This information should be inserted into the management platform of our cities, and we will have to need experts who are capable of using that information. We worked out the so-called map of the citizen, and we wanted to incorporate all accessible services, but we did not have experts enough who could use it in the city of Yelabuga. So it's more a comment rather than a question. And another suggestion is about the standards. When building a plant, we noticed that during building that plant, this company worked together with Cisco, with other companies, and they just use their corporate strategy. They follow their own roadmaps. They keep on cooperating, for example, with Cisco, and they use their own procedures. And it's very important for us to have such companies in our regions. And we have to work out our own concept of a smart city, but do it in such a way that a foreign investor comes to our city and can find its place within our roadmap. So when we discuss standards, our production lines have their own standards, and it was quite an advanced technology, and we used gravitation to mix different ingredients, and DSM company located their first plant over there in our city. And when building that plant, we found out that there are 50 plants like that in the world. And all these plants are very environmentally friendly, and they are located in large cities, in very modern cities, and they cause no harm to the environment. But when we were building our own plant, when we were building that high tower, we had to build another tower close to that one. I'm sorry, it's beyond our discussion. No, I think we cannot have a smart city when our standards do not correlate with the development of smart cities. So today we have to develop our own standards, our own. Yes, we heard that. And third thing, right now we are following a project of Ministry of Trade and Industry. We conducted a research among young people. We asked younger generation, what should we do to make younger people stay within our cities? For example, what should we do that they keep on working in our industry? It's very important for our younger generation to be involved into the world tendencies and trends which exist globally. So that's what we should create through digital platforms. We should create a system of communication with people all over the world. We should bear it in mind, because our young people, yes, we understood you. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, we are very short of time. Thank you very much. You are quite right. And out of 25 pilot projects, only 10 are large cities and the rest are quite small towns. But they have human capital, they have intellectual capital, and very often they have experts. And within our project, we create separate events for training and educating new personnel. And of course, without educated personnel, we won't be able to do anything. And of course, standardization and accepting new standards is a very important task. And we should exclude superfluous standards. Sometimes we have too many requirements and we should cross them out. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, within the next 3 days we will keep on working, And tomorrow we have 3 panel discussions about digitalization and smart cities and how to make the city environment comfortable. And you can discuss it in more detail. But right now, I would like to finish our plenary session and thank you all and thank the speakers for participation.
Спасибо большое. Сессия завершена.